There's a certain magic to the sitcoms that define our eras. They become more than just television shows, they are time capsules, sonic wallpapers to our own lives. For a generation that came of age at the turn of the new millennium, the sound of a cheap electric guitar riff and the sight of a beat-up 1969 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser backing out of a driveway was an invitation. An invitation to hang out down the street in a smoky wood-paneled basement in Point Place, Wisconsin. It was an invitation to the world of that 70s show. We felt like we knew them all. The lanky, good-natured Eric, the effortlessly cool Hyde, the lovable doofus Kelso, his on-again, off-again flame Jackie, and the sweet girl next door Donna. They were the heart of the show, but every family and every friend group has its wild card, the agent of chaos. In the Forman household, that agent was Laurie. Eric's older sister, Laurie Forman, was a masterpiece of sitcom antagonism. Beautiful, manipulative, and armed with a disarmingly sweet voice, she used to wrap her parents around her finger. She was the perfect file. She glided through scenes with a confidence that was both enviable and infuriating, her presence a constant, hilarious thorn in her brother's side. The actress who brought this unforgettable character to life was Lisa Robin Kelly. With her bright eyes and perfect comedic timing, Lisa made Laurie more than just a stereotype. She made her magnetic. We loved to hate her, and we loved to watch her. But the story of the woman who played Laurie is far more complex and ultimately far more heartbreaking than any storyline the show's writers could have ever conceived. It's a story about the blinding glare of the spotlight, the long, dark shadows it casts, and the profound human fragility that can exist behind the brightest of smiles. This is the story of a life that burned incredibly bright before being extinguished far, far too soon. To truly understand the phenomenon of that 70s show and the world that Lisa Robin Kelly stepped into, we have to transport ourselves back to the late 1990s. It was a peculiar and transitional time. The grunge-fueled angst of the early decade had faded, giving way to a new wave of pop optimism. The internet was moving from a niche curiosity to a household utility. Yet social media hadn't yet taken its grip on the cultural psyche. There was a sense of breathing room, a final moment of pre-9/11, pre-social media innocence. In this climate, television was dominated by a specific brand of sitcom. Shows like Friends, Frasier, and Seinfeld had perfected the multi-camera live studio audience format. But as the decade wound down, a powerful wave of nostalgia began to crest. The baby boomer generation was looking back at the 1960s, but for the younger Gen X and elder millennials, the 1970s was the decade of their childhood. It was a treasure trove of kitsch and cool, bell-bottoms, feathered hair, muscle cars, and the birth of modern rock and roll. The era felt distant enough to be romanticized, but recent enough to feel viscerally familiar. The Fox network, still seen as the younger, edgier alternative to the big three networks, was the perfect home for a show that could tap into this sentiment. Creators Bonnie and Terry Turner, who had previously found success with shows like Third Rock from the Sun and Wayne's World, conceived of a show that wasn't just set in the 70s, but felt like it could have been made then. That 70s show was a masterclass in tone. It blended family sitcom warmth with a slightly more daring countercultural edge. The famous 360-degree scenes in the basement, where the kids would pass around a joint as the camera spun around the circle, were groundbreaking for primetime television. It was this blend of sweet nostalgia and subtle rebellion that made it a sensation. Into this perfectly calibrated cultural moment stepped Lisa Robin Kelly. Born in Southington, Connecticut, on March 5, 1970, and later raised in Sylvania, Ohio, Lisa's early life was far removed from the Hollywood glamour she would later experience. She was a theater student at DePaul University in Chicago, a city with a robust and respected theater scene. This was where she honed her craft, not in pursuit of fleeting fame, but in the study of performance itself. Like so many aspiring actors, her journey was one of persistence. She moved to Los Angeles in the early 1990s and began the grueling process of auditions, callbacks, and the inevitable rejections. Her resume before her breakout role is a fascinating map of 90s television. She landed guest spots on a string of iconic shows, a 1992 episode of Married with Children, where she played a character named Carol, small roles on Silk Stockings, Murphy Brown, and Charmed. Each role was a small victory, another line on her resume, another day on a professional set. She was a working actress, paying her dues in the trenches of episodic television. One of her more notable early roles was in the 1995 film Payback, a gritty, direct-to-video thriller. It was a world away from the bright poppy colors of the Foreman's Kitchen. These early roles demonstrate her versatility. She wasn't just a comedic actress. She had a dramatic range that she was just beginning to explore. But it was comedy where she would find her home. When the casting call went out for That 70s Show in 1998, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. The character of Laurie Forman was on paper a classic sitcom archetype, the promiscuous, manipulative older sister. It was a role that could have easily become a one-note caricature. But from the moment Lisa Robin Kelly auditioned, the show's creators knew they had found something special. They saw in her an ability to deliver Laurie's most cutting lines with a smile that was both dazzling and dangerous. She wasn't just playing a mean girl, she was playing a girl who had perfected the art of getting what she wanted, a master of psychological warfare within the suburban family unit. Her chemistry with the cast was immediate. Her scenes with Kurtwood Smith, who played the stern patriarch, Red Foreman, were comedic gold. Red, who saw through Laurie's innocent act, was her primary adversary, yet she could often outmaneuver him, much to Eric's, Topher Grace's, eternal frustration. The dynamic she created was crucial to the show's early success. She wasn't part of the core basement circle, which made her an outsider in her own home, an unpredictable force who could sweep in and disrupt the status quo at any moment. For 3 seasons, Lisa was a vital part of the ensemble. She was at the center of some of the show's most memorable early storylines. Her secret affair with Kelso, Ashton Kutcher, her brief marriage to a man named Fenton to get her hands on his inheritance, and her complicated relationship with her college professor. She stole scenes effortlessly. One rarely discussed element of her performance was her physicality. She didn't just deliver her lines, she embodied Laurie's casual, almost predatory confidence. The way she would lean against a doorframe, flip her hair, or adopt a pose of feigned innocence was a masterclass in nonverbal comedy. But as the show's popularity soared into the stratosphere, a darkness began to creep into Lisa's personal life. The pressures of being on a hit television show are immense. The long hours, the public scrutiny, the sudden loss of anonymity. It can be a disorienting and isolating experience. Behind the scenes, Lisa began to struggle. During the show's 3rd season, her appearances became more sporadic. Then suddenly, she was gone. The official explanation at the time was vague, citing creative reasons and the natural evolution of storylines. But the truth was far more painful. Lisa had developed a problem with alcohol, and it was beginning to take a severe toll on her life and her ability to work. In a later, heartbreakingly candid interview, Lisa herself explained the reason for her departure. She revealed that during her time on the show, she had suffered a miscarriage. The grief and trauma from this devastating loss were overwhelming, and she began to drink to cope with the pain. It was not, as some might assume, the cliché story of a young star corrupted by Hollywood excess. It was a story of profound personal tragedy and a subsequent turn to self-medication that spiraled into addiction. She said, "I had lost a baby, and as a result of that, I lost everything, and I was abusing alcohol." This admission adds a layer of raw human tragedy to her story that is often overlooked. The bubbly, confident actress on screen was privately navigating an unimaginable loss, and she was doing it in the crucible of network television. Her decision to leave the show wasn't one of professional petulance. It was a desperate act of self-preservation. She knew she was not well, and she stepped away from the biggest success of her life to try and heal. The show, of course, had to go on. For a while, the character of Laurie was simply written out, said to be away at beauty school. But the writers eventually decided they needed the character back. In a move that highlighted the relentless nature of television production, the role of Laurie Forman was recast for the show's 6th season. Actress Christina Moore stepped in to fill the void. While Moore was a capable actress, the change was jarring for many viewers. The magic was different. It was a stark reminder of just how much Lisa Robin Kelly had owned the role, how her unique energy was an irreplaceable part of the show's DNA. For Lisa, the years following her departure were a mixture of hope and struggle. She did, for a time, seem to be on a path to recovery. In a surprising and welcome turn of events, she was invited back to that 7 show for a handful of episodes in the 5th season, before the role was permanently recast. Her return was a testament to the affection the cast and crew still held for her. It was a chance for redemption, a hopeful sign that she might be able to reclaim her career. Watching those episodes now carries a particular poignancy. She looks a little different, perhaps a bit more fragile, but the spark is still there. The comedic timing, the sly smile, it's all still present. It felt like a homecoming, a brief, beautiful moment where it seemed like everything might just turn out okay. However, the insidious nature of addiction is its persistence. The path to recovery is not a straight line. It is a winding road with peaks, valleys, and treacherous U-turns. After her final appearance on the show, Lisa largely receded from the public eye, taking on only a few small roles in independent films. The momentum from her sitcom fame had dissipated, and her personal battles continued, away from the Klieg lights. As the 2000s gave way to the 2010s, Lisa's life took a more public and tumultuous turn. The rise of gossip websites and the 24/7 news cycle meant that the struggles of celebrities were no longer whispered about. They were broadcast in high definition for the world to see and judge. In 2010, she was arrested for driving under the influence in North Carolina. This was the first in a series of legal troubles that would tragically come to define the final years of her life. What followed was a heartbreaking and public spiral. In 2012, she was arrested again, this time on a felony charge of corporal injury upon a spouse. Her husband at the time, Robert Joseph Gilliam, was also arrested. The details that emerged painted a messy and painful picture of her private life. The accompanying mugshot was shocking. Gone was the vibrant, glowing actress from the sitcom posters. In her place was a woman who looked tired, lost, and profoundly sad. The photo went viral. The internet, in its characteristic cruelty, turned her pain into a meme. People who had once laughed with her as Laurie Forman were now laughing at her, mocking her appearance and her downfall. This moment represents a grim intersection of celebrity, addiction, and the dark side of modern media. It's a painful example of how we, as a culture, often consume personal tragedy as entertainment. Behind that mugshot was a woman in the throes of a serious disease, a woman who had suffered immense personal loss and who was now being publicly shamed at her lowest point. In an attempt to reclaim her own narrative, Lisa gave a television interview to ABC News shortly after the arrest. It was a difficult and painful watch. She appeared fragile and at times seemed to be slurring her words, though she vehemently denied being intoxicated during the interview. She spoke about her past struggles, her sobriety, and her desire to revive her career. She said, "My poor mother has to see that picture. That's not what I look like. I'm not running from this. I have paid my dues, and I am clean and sober." Whether she was fully sober at that moment is a matter of debate, but her words reveal a desperate desire to be seen as more than her mistakes, to be seen as a human being who was fighting for her life. It was a cry for help, broadcast to the entire world. The emotional toll on those who knew and loved her was immense. Her co-stars, who had spent their formative years with her on set, watched from a distance, helpless. Ashton Kutcher, in a later interview, spoke with profound sadness about her situation. He recalled the vibrant, talented person he knew and lamented the disease that had taken hold of her. It's the story told by so many families of addicts. The feeling of loving someone who is slowly being replaced by their addiction, the desperate hope for their recovery, and the gut-wrenching pain of watching them slip away. There is a little-known anecdote from her final year that encapsulates the chaos and hope that defined her life. A friend recounted that Lisa had begun carrying around a portfolio of her old headshots from before and during her That 70s Show fame. She would show them to people not out of vanity, but as if to say, "This is who I really am. This is the person I'm trying to get back to." It was a tangible link to a time of happiness and success, a reminder of the potential that still lived inside her, buried under years of pain and substance abuse. It's an incredibly sad and humanizing detail, a woman trying to remind herself and the world of the person she once was. The controversies of Lisa's final years are inextricably linked to her addiction and her tumultuous relationship with Robert Gilliam. She accused him of abuse, and he accused her of the same. The truth of their volatile relationship is likely buried in the "he said, she said" of it all. In May 2013, she was arrested again, this time for a suspected DUI. Just a month later, in June, she was arrested for assault after another dispute with Gilliam. It's easy to look at this string of arrests and see a pattern of criminal behavior, but through the lens of addiction medicine and psychology, it's a clear pattern of a disease reaching its final desperate stages. Addiction rewires the brain, leading to poor impulse control, erratic behavior, and a cycle of shame and relapse. The legal troubles were not the cause of her downfall. They were the symptoms of a disease that had taken almost complete control of her life. The historical debate, if one exists, is not about her guilt or innocence in these specific domestic disputes, but about the systems that failed her. A system where addiction is often treated as a moral failing rather than a public health crisis, and where the response is punitive rather than therapeutic. She was caught in a revolving door of arrests and brief stints in jail, when what she so clearly needed was intensive long-term medical and psychological care. By August 2013, it seemed Lisa had finally reached a point where she was ready to fully commit to recovery. She had recently filed for divorce from Gilliam, a significant step in removing a source of instability from her life. Her new boyfriend, recognizing the severity of her situation, checked her into Pax Rehab House, a treatment facility in Altadena, California. This was it. This was the moment of hope. She was voluntarily seeking help. She was taking the single most important step towards saving her own life. The consequences of years of substance abuse had taken a severe toll on her body. Addiction is a war of attrition, and her system was weakened, but she was in a safe place surrounded by professionals. There was every reason to believe that this could be the beginning of a new chapter. Just a few days later, on the night of August 14th, 2013, Lisa Robin Kelly went to sleep in her room at the rehabilitation center. She never woke up. She was pronounced dead on the morning of August 15th. She was only 43 years old. The news of her death was a shock, even to those who had followed her public struggles. It felt so incredibly cruel. She had died at the very place she had gone to save her life. The irony was almost too much to bear. Her death certificate, released months later, listed the cause as multiple drug intoxication. The coroner's report stated it was accidental, the result of an overdose of an unspecified combination of drugs taken orally. It was a sterile clinical explanation for an immeasurable human tragedy. The long-term significance of Lisa Robin Kelly's story is multifaceted. For fans of that 70s show, it casts a permanent shadow over the otherwise sunny nostalgia of the series. It's impossible to watch her now as Laurie in all her vibrant, mischievous glory without feeling a profound sense of sadness for the life that was lost. Her death forces us to look beyond the character and see the real person. And in doing so, it complicates our relationship with a beloved piece of pop culture. More broadly, her story is a powerful and tragic cautionary tale about the perils of fame and the devastating reality of addiction. Lisa was not the first, nor will she be the last, talented performer to be consumed by these forces. Her life and death are a part of a sad Hollywood tradition, a story that echoes in the biographies of so many other bright stars who burned out too soon. Her story compels us to ask difficult questions about our own role in the celebrity ecosystem. Why are we so fascinated by the downfall of famous people? What responsibility does the media have in its portrayal of those who are struggling? And what can we do to foster a culture of greater empathy and support for those dealing with mental health and addiction issues? Perhaps the most important legacy of Lisa's story is the lesson it offers in human complexity. People are not monoliths. They are not simply good or bad. They are a messy, beautiful, contradictory collection of their best intentions and their worst impulses, their strengths and their vulnerabilities. Lisa Robin Kelly was a gifted comedic actress who made millions of people laugh. She was also a woman who suffered an unspeakable personal loss. She was a loving friend and a devoted daughter. And she was an addict who fought a long, hard, and ultimately losing battle with her disease. All of these things were true at the same time. In the end, the story of Lisa Robin Kelly is not one of moral failure or Hollywood cliche. It is a deeply human tragedy. It's the story of a woman who flew incredibly close to the sun, was profoundly wounded, and spent the rest of her life trying to find her way back to the ground. She brought a memorable, iconic character to life, one who will continue to entertain audiences for generations to come. But her own life was a testament to the fact that behind every performance, there is a person, and behind every smile, there can be a world of pain. We should remember her not for the tragic headlines or the sorrowful mugshot, but for the talent she possessed and the joy she brought to so many. And in remembering her, perhaps we can find a greater capacity for compassion. Compassion for the private struggles that so many people face, famous or not. Her story is a heartbreaking reminder that the most important thing we can offer one another is not judgment, but understanding. And for a life that ended in such darkness, the most fitting tribute we can pay is to let her story be a source of light for others, a call to be a little kinder, a little more empathetic, and a little more aware of the fragile beauty of the human experience. The laughter she gave us will echo in reruns forever, a bittersweet reminder of a brilliant talent and a life that deserved a happier ending. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.